just to catch up a lot of my American friends who haven't been able to follow it properly, there is a lot of turmoil going on the world stage in regards to Africa and their relationship to the neo-imperialist West and agreements with Russia. When we were getting really excited about White Lady Black Panther, aka Barbie, and we're doing Senate hearings around finding UFOs, Africa as a continent and a lot of the nations in it were having discussions with China and Russia around new trade agreements and around new financing options. The IMF and World Bank historically have had agreements that are nothing short of predatory and it's extractive, and Russia and China have offered them income-free loans and lots of other incentives to kind of get off of that. At the same time, there have been multiple military juntas. Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum has been overthrown by the military. France uses Niger as their main Sahelian base to combat the jihadist enemies to the northeast of Burkina Faso. Niger seems to be a popularly backed junta as well. They have the largest AFRICOM presence with 6 outposts in the country. Nigeria, who is one of the leading countries in the ECOWAS, the West African Coalition, which is supported especially by France in the West, has responded by imposing severe economic and military sanctions and demanded that if Bazoum's presidency isn't restored by August 6th, which I believe is the end of this week, that they will engage militarily. So in the same time, in the same region, in the Sahel, Assimi Goïta expelled the French army and banned French as an official language, and they're really kind of pushing to oust the the old colonial occupiers. And in Burkina Faso, we see one of the youngest world leaders coming to the stage in the form of Ibrahim Traoré, who announced the nation's independence from French colonial rule, sending the French military out and halting a lot of the exports that had been going on. Later on in this little thing, we'll talk about Traoré's speech with the Russia-Africa summit. So Niger's Niamey has ceased exports of uranium and gold to Paris as well. A large amount of the energy infrastructure in France is provided by Niger. And so that's one of the main reasons that the sanctions and military threats have been going on. This past week, Burkina Faso's Traoré attended the Russia-Africa Forum in Moscow. This occurred fairly recently this past week. There, at one point in his speech, this is one of the most notable quotes that I saw. He said, "We tend to dismiss the key role historically played by Russia in Africa against Nazism. As far as what concerns Burkina Faso today, which was the 2nd of August where the speech went on, and for more than 8 years, we've been confronted with the most barbaric, the most violent form of neocolonialism, of imperialism. Slavery continues to impose itself on us. Our ancestors taught us one thing: the slave who cannot carry out his own revolt doesn't deserve to be pitied. We do not feel sorry for ourselves. We do not ask anyone to feel sorry for us. The people of Burkina Faso have decided to fight against terrorism in order to relaunch their development. In this struggle, valiant peoples from 20 populations have pledged to take up arms in the face of terrorism. This we affectionately call the VDP of volunteers. We are surprised to see the imperialists calling these VDPs militias and all kinds of other things. It's disappointing because in Europe, when people take up arms to defend their homeland, they're treated as patriots." So this happened at the Russia-Africa summit, where also South Africa's EFF was really pushing to enter into the BRICS agreement, so at the end of this week, we've got the military deadline imposed by ECOWAS, but then I believe the 15th to the 22nd or something like that is going to be the BRICS summit, where Venezuela is pushing to be let into BRICS. South Africa, a lot of South African factions are pushing to get into BRICS, and of course the Burkina Faso and Niger and Mali contingents are also pushing for it. So this potentially is going to lead to a economic realignment of the African continent, where former Western imperialist powers are being pushed out in favor of national sovereignty movements, and it's really fascinating and kind of frightening. And I guess we'll see what happens. There's been I'm going through. I've written a lot of my notes here on envelopes, so I've got a lot hanging around. So there's also a lot of disquiet in Senegal. Lots of people burning French flags and out protesting in the streets because of the Ivory Coast, Senegal, and Benin have said that they'll support ECOWAS in the military offensive against Niger and potentially the other nations who are trying to buck French colonial rule. So, one hell of a fascinating week. Unfortunately, we're not going to hear about much of this in the American news feed. What we do here a lot, of course, is heavily in support of ECOWAS. But we'll see, and we'll see, especially towards the end of the month, when the BRICS summit comes up.